I've been a K-9 handler for more than a decade, and routine is a shape I know like the lines on my own palm. Mornings start with polished boots, leashes coiled just so, and canine paws tapping a rhythm that becomes a kind of prayer, steady, disciplined, predictable. That morning I led 14 German shepherds through gate 14 and believed, quietly, stubbornly, that nothing could surprise me. The terminal glowed like an emptied sun. Light poured through glass walls, pooling across the floor. 1,000 small noises threaded the air: coffee machines, distant boarding calls, the soft slap of a stroller. Travelers moved in little currents, each with a private destination on their minds. My unit took shape beside me, a wall of muscle and attention. Valor, my lead dog, walked a half step ahead, ears pricked as if listening to a radio none of us could hear. People smiled, phones lifted for pictures. Then he paused. It was a small shift, nose up, shoulders tightening, but it made something cold pass under my skin. Not instinct exactly, something closer to recognition, the way a familiar song can make a room feel different. He turned his head toward a waiting area and fixed on a tiny figure, a little girl, maybe 4, standing perfectly still beside a luggage cart. Her jacket was pink, her hair a small halo, and in both hands she clutched a battered gray teddy bear as if it were a life preserver. Children get lost in airports. I'd reunited plenty with crying toddlers and frantic parents. But she wasn't crying. She wasn't moving. She just stared forward, eyes distant like someone watching from behind glass. I called out, gentle and rehearsed. "Hey there. Are you lost, sweetheart?" No answer. She pressed the bear's fur to her mouth, knuckles white. Valor's low growl threaded through the air before any human voice caught up. Then, without warning, the other dogs adjusted, mimicked, synchronized. Formation broke like glass. 14 of them moved in a slow, fluid pivot, surrounding the girl with a discipline that felt almost ritual. Passengers stopped mid-stride, phones raised. Fear hummed up from the floor like heat. They weren't aggressive. Their bodies were taut, not bent for attack, but angled in a shield. Their heads pointed outward, protecting the space at the circle's center as if an unseen threat pressed through that small patch of air. I felt the world narrow to breath and fur and a single unmoving child. Valor hooked his nose forward toward the bear. He sniffed. His lips twitched. Then he lunged, not at the girl, but at the toy. The motion shattered the fragile peace. Alarms and shouts collided. People backed away in waves. Someone screamed. My officers moved like a trained organism, a tide pushing the crowd outward, sealing the terminals. I didn't think. I followed what Valor already knew. A handler ran the scanner over the bear. The device screamed a high-pitched beep and the screen lit, metal signature. Wiring. Not old toy wiring. Something precise, cold, engineered. The bear felt heavier than cotton, metallic beneath the stuffing. Valor's muzzle hovered over it, as if he could smell secrets. I asked the girl, her voice thin as paper, "Who gave you the bear?" She looked up, blue eyes unfocused. "My daddy," she said. "He fixed it." The answer landed like a stone. There was a man in our world who fixed things, and then, apparently, vanished. A family in quiet collapse. An engineer who worked with things that hum in frequencies the rest of us cannot imagine. Then a name, Ethan Rowan, spun out of airport gossip and into our ears like a headline that we moved the child and bear aside. The bomb squad was already on its way, the rhythm of our lives replaced by urgent protocol. Valor didn't leave the circle. He paced the perimeter, muscles taut, focus absolute. When a woman burst through the security line screaming her name, Sarah, every officer braced. She flung herself down beside her daughter like water reclaiming a lost thing. For a heartbeat, the world steadied. Mother, child, reunion. But Valor stiffened again. His nose went skyward and he fixed on the tarmac that a black van sat idling beyond the perimeter fence as if it had been carved from shadow. The driver's window reflected a face for an instant. No expression, patient. The van drove off like a bruise across pavement. Units went after it. Sirens split the air. A chase began that would carve itself into the day and keep us all awake for nights to come. Back inside, the bear came apart under precise hands. Hidden within the stitching lay not a toy secret but a surveillance node, a transmitter that had been harvesting signals, relaying them to an unknown receiver. The technician's voice had a tremor when he said military grade. Someone had piggybacked onto frequencies used by Ethan's work. They had placed a live surveillance device inside a child's comfort and used her as a walking antenna. My skin felt too thin. Valor's body was a coil of answers no one else possessed. He led us with nose and instinct, and through him we discovered a network, the van that sped off, the maintenance bag tucked balefully near the bench, and finally, a small explosive hidden among cleaning supplies. Yodi neutralized it. Outside, the suspect's van met spike strips and steel. It spun and crumpled into the security fence like a trapped animal. 2 men were dragged out, their faces a map of guilt. Loot from the van told stories and photographs. Pictures of Sarah, of Ethan, of the little girl at other airports. Timestamps, coordinates, a dossier of obsession. I stared at the images and felt cold logic thread through them. This wasn't a single, isolated attempt at surveillance. It was systematic. Someone had been tracking the Rowan family for months, perhaps years, waiting for an opportunity to turn a child into a node in a wider network. When the airport quieted, just a shade quieter than before, people clapped. Cameras flashed. For a moment, the chaos forged into collective relief, gratitude spilling into applause for the dogs and the teams who'd moved like clockwork. A little applause for fur and bravery felt too small. I visited Sarah and her daughter in the hospital. The room smelled like antiseptic and warm bread. Small and ordinary beside the magnitude of what had almost happened. Mia laughed when Valor nudged her hand. She whispered into his ear like telling him a secret. "You're my angel." She folded a little note in a childish scrawl and handed it to me. "Tell the dog he's my angel." I kept that paper. Maybe I'll frame it someday. 4 days the footage from Gate 14 did its rounds. Television anchors, shared clips, hashtags spinning myths and prayers. People sent letters, cookies, drawings of shepherds wearing tiny uniforms. Offers to appear on shows arrived in waves. We turned almost all of them down. Valor and the others had done what they'd been trained to do and more. They'd acted with a kind of moral geometry that outstripped the manuals. They'd seen danger where machines and men hadn't yet seen form. Investigations traced the signal to a network with tentacles that reached into corporate secrets and international markets. Experts debated who had the motive to weaponize a child's toy. I listened to briefings and watched analysts lay out possibilities. And one fact kept punching through the noise. If Valor hadn't reacted, if he'd blinked, if the dogs had misread the moment, Gate 14 would have become a different kind of story. I never wanted that weight of what if on my chest. But it made our work feel thin and miraculous at once. The dogs had given us a margin of safety that no checklists ever could. Weeks later, walking through the empty kennels at dusk, Valor's silhouette shifted in the last light. And I thought about how easily our lives fold into other people's stories. We were the ones in uniform that day, but at some fundamental level we were instruments of trust. A rough, breathing architecture that kept ordinary life possible. People called it a miracle. I called it hard work paired with the strange, uncanny intelligence of animals who see the shapes of danger before we learn their names. Mia's note is still folded into my wallet. Her handwriting is clumsy and perfect. Sometimes I take it out, put it by Valor's bed, and say thank you, because words matter. And because the smallest hands are sometimes the ones the world must learn to protect with everything it has. I went home that night. Boots heavy, tired but light with relief. Outside my window, the city hummed on. Inside, a dog slept and dreamt. His paws twitched. He saved us all before breakfast. It's a sentence I say to myself sometimes when the world feels brittle. There are heroes who never know they are heroes until the moment they need to be. Valor knew long before the rest of us did. And for that, I will be forever grateful.